Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday morning to you. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. Hey, make your plans now to be with us, Preterist Pilgrim Weekend, July 9, 10, and 11 at the Ardmore Convention Center. Our theme this year, pardon me, is the book of Revelation. I suspect that it's going to be book of Revelation part 1. Okay? I kind of suspect that. Anyway, we've already got a great lineup of speakers. We want you to plan to be with us. Yes, it will be live streamed. And we're just really excited about this already. So make your plans to be with us July 9 through 11, 2020. All right. Let's get back into the text of Matthew chapter 24, 29 and following. Let me emphasize again, okay? You cannot separate verses 29 and following. Pardon me. You simply cannot separate these verses, which were predictive of the shaking of the powers of the heavens, the coming of the Son of Man, from the great tribulation that Jesus had predicted. And the great tribulation is inextricably, inseparably bound up to the abomination of desolation that was foretold by Daniel. When you see, Jesus was speaking to his apostles, and he said, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, let the one who reads understand. Now, unfortunately, we're being told, well, you know, Daniel didn't actually predict the abomination of desolation for Jesus' day. What Daniel foretold was in the time of Antiochus Epiphanes, and Jesus was just telling them to remember what happened then when events took place in their time. Well, that's kind of funny. Jesus said, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel. Now look, it's kind of tough to see what Daniel spoke of if Daniel did not speak of what they were supposed to see. I'm sorry, they were going to see what Daniel wrote about. But if Daniel did not write about the events to take place in their day and their time, then they're not going to see what Daniel wrote about. So, to reiterate here, the abomination of desolation would be in the lifetime of the first century generation. The Great Tribulation would be the direct result of that, and the Great Tribulation would lead directly to and immediately to the coming of the Son of Man. You cannot have, there is no justification for the idea that the Great Tribulation spans 2,000 years so far. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Now, I've been sharing with you about the nature of the language of the coming of the Son of Man and what have you. And I want to focus here on verse 30. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the heaven. I've already gone over this enough. I'm not going to take any more time to point out the fact that the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the heaven does not mean there was going to be something up in the sky, as many translators have understood that. No, it means they would be seeing events in the historical realm that were to be the sign of the fact that the Son was enthroned in the in the heavens as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He would be enthroned at the right hand of the Father. So they would see physical events. I just wonder if it has anything to do with the lead up, i.e., the abomination of desolation and the Great Tribulation, as if those were not signs of that critical eschatological time period. Look, folks, the Great Tribulation itself in the Old Testament is always linked to resurrection, the coming of the Lord, the judgment, the kingdom. So when Jesus said they were going to experience the Great Tribulation, guess what that meant? It meant the judgment, the kingdom, the resurrection was something they were going to experience. There is no huge temporal gap in the Old Testament narrative between the Great Tribulation and the appearance of the Son of Man, or the Messiah, or the resurrection, or the kingdom. The Great Tribulation would lead directly, inextricably, inseparably to the resurrection. We have more on that later. So, that's what happened on the physical realm, pointing to the heavenly realities. The physical pointing to the spiritual. Now then, I want to begin to take a look at the next part of the verse. And then when they see the sign of the Son of Man enthroned, when they see the physical events pointing to Jesus as King of Kings and Lord of Lords, what's going to happen? Then, which is still the time of the Great Tribulation, then all the tribes of the earth shall mourn. Now, first of all, here's something you need to know. The Greek word that is used for tribes here is phuli. It's used 31 times in the New Testament. And it almost invariably refers to the 12 tribes of Israel. This is not talking this is not talking about the Zulu tribes in Africa. This is not talking about any of the obscure tribes in South America. This is not talking about the Sioux, the Apache, the Arapaho, Native Americans. All the tribes of the earth is a reference to the suffering on Israel. Now look, I've already suggested that. After all, the abomination of desolation would be set up where? In the land of Israel, specifically Judea. The tribulation would come as a direct result of that abomination in the land of Israel. It is therefore contextually, in the flow of the text, it's the tribes of Israel suffering the abomination and recognizing in this judgment that was happening to them, that the predictions of the Messiah were coming true. The one they had killed is truly King of Kings. He is truly the Messiah. Now, I was raised being taught that Matthew chapter 24 and verse 30, since it's quoted in Revelation chapter 1 and verse 7, and we'll get there, proves that this is an end of time event, because after all, every eye shall see him. Well, we'll look at that. But I want you to notice that this very language, this very verse, is taken from Zechariah chapter 12, verse 10 and following. In other words, Zechariah chapter 12, 10 and following predicted what Jesus is talking about in Matthew 24, 29 and following. Oh, by the way, it's very fascinating that as Jesus hung on the cross, in John chapter 19, John also quotes this verse to speak about those who were standing around looking upon him and mourning him as the only son who is being slain. So here we have John applying the language of mourning over the death of Jesus by citing Zechariah 12. But wait a minute. Matthew chapter 24 is writing about an event long after the cross. Long after the cross. So Matthew chapter 24 is not predicting the cross. Oh, and by the way, it's not predicting the ascension of Christ either. It is talking about the coming of the Son of Man that would come after the abomination of desolation and after the great tribulation. This is talking about Christ coming in judgment. And we'll have more to talk about on that on the flip side. In the meantime, hey, don't forget, here we are, the month is already half over. Don't forget my February 3-book special, We Shall Meet Him in the Air, The Wedding of the King of Kings. I discuss Zechariah chapter 12 in this book, The Last Days Identified. The easiest way to settle the issue of eschatology is to realize we are not in the last days. The Christian age has no end. It has no last days. It's proven in this book and in Flaming Fire. If you purchased all 3 books independently, separately, they would cost you right at $60. February 2020, 3-book special for continental U.S. orders only. If you live out of the U.S., you would like to order these books in PDF form at a greatly reduced price even, contact me through my website. But for U.S. orders, total delivered price, $40 delivered to your door. Okay, thank you so much for joining me for this morning's Morning Musings. We have more on Zechariah 12:10 and Matthew 24:30 on the flip side. I'll see you there.